My fiancé looked at me and said softly, almost kindly, "Maybe we shouldn't wear the ring around my coworkers. It looks forced." I remember standing there with my jacket half on, keys in my hand, staring at him like my brain needed a few extra seconds to catch up. Forced. That was the word he chose. Not uncomfortable, not awkward, forced. Like our engagement was something we were pushing too hard instead of something we were proud of. I nodded. Okay. I didn't argue. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I didn't explain how long I'd saved for that ring or how carefully I'd chosen it. I just slipped it off and set it on the dresser like he asked. 2 weeks later, at a family dinner, his sister noticed something missing from my hand. And that's when everything stopped. I'm 29 years old. I'd been engaged for 7 months to a man I'd been with for 3 years. We met on a dating app, clicked immediately, and moved fast in that way that feels romantic when you're inside it and reckless only in hindsight. He works in corporate sales. I work in data analysis. Different worlds, but I thought we balanced each other. He'd been dropping hints about getting engaged for months. Not subtle ones either. Ring styles, friends' proposals, comments about when it's our turn. I wanted to make him happy. So I proposed on his birthday. Nothing flashy, just a nice dinner and the ring I'd saved up for. He said yes, smiled, cried, posted it all over social media within minutes. I thought that meant we were solid. But when he asked me to hide the ring around his coworkers, something inside me shifted. Quietly. Like a hairline crack you don't notice until pressure hits it just right. At his company party that night, he introduced me as his girlfriend. Not his fiancée, just girlfriend. Like the ring sitting at home didn't exist. Like the promise we'd made wasn't official enough to mention. I smiled. I shook hands. I made small talk. I played the role he needed me to play. On the drive home, he seemed relieved. Happy, even. Talking about how well it went, how much his boss liked me, how glad he was I'd gone along with it. I said almost nothing. That night, I put the ring back on my finger before going to sleep. The next morning, he didn't mention it. Neither did I. But once you notice someone is willing to hide you, you start seeing everything else they've been hiding too. And I had no idea yet that a single empty space on my finger was about to expose everything we'd been pretending not to see. When I look back now, the beginning of our relationship feels almost too easy, like a story that moves fast because neither person wants to slow down enough to ask the harder questions. We met on a dating app 3 years earlier. One of those late-night matches that turns into hours of messaging, then a coffee that accidentally stretches into dinner. He was charming in a polished way, confident without being arrogant, the kind of man who knew how to sell himself because selling was literally his job. Corporate sales had trained him to read people quickly, to mirror energy, to say the right things at the right time. I liked that about him. I was quieter, analytical. I worked in data analysis, spent my days buried in numbers, patterns, probabilities. I wasn't flashy, I was steady. And in the beginning, that contrast felt complementary. He brought excitement. I brought grounding. Or at least, that's how I framed it. We moved fast, faster than I usually would have, but it felt right at the time. We started spending most nights together within a few months. He talked about the future early, trips we'd take, places we'd live, how different our relationship felt compared to his past ones. I listened and let myself believe that intensity meant intention. After about a year, we moved in together. His job was demanding, social, filled with after-work events and client dinners. Mine was quieter, more predictable. I adjusted my schedule around his more than he adjusted around mine, but I didn't see it as a sacrifice. I saw it as compromise, partnership. His family liked me. His parents were warm, welcoming. His sister treated me like I was already part of the family. At holidays, people asked when the wedding would be, not if. I laughed it off, but part of me tucked those moments away as reassurance, proof that I belonged. The engagement itself wasn't a surprise to him. He'd been hinting for months, commenting on friends' rings, sending me photos, asking questions that weren't really questions. I proposed on his birthday because it felt symbolic, like I was choosing him publicly, deliberately. He cried. He said yes. He posted it online immediately, captions full of hearts and excitement. For a while, I rode that high, the validation, the certainty, the sense that we were aligned. But even then, there were small things I didn't question. How he introduced me differently depending on the room, how some parts of his life felt closed off to me, especially at work, how he liked the idea of being engaged more than the reality of what it meant. I told myself that not everyone shows commitment the same way, that love doesn't have to look identical in every space. I didn't realize yet that what I was calling flexibility was actually self-erasure, and I definitely didn't realize that the ring he was so happy to post online would soon become something he wanted hidden in real life. After the night of the company party, I told myself not to overthink it. One request, one evening, one compromise. Relationships are built on those, right? I didn't want to be the fiancé who turned a small comment into a big problem, so I stayed quiet and watched. And once I started watching, I couldn't stop noticing. He stopped posting about us altogether. No photos, no mentions, no casual date night stories, the way he used to before the engagement. Our life together still existed, but only in private. Online, he looked single adjacent. Not available, exactly, but not clearly taken either. Then there was work. His coworkers never asked me about wedding plans, not once. When we ran into someone from his office at a bar a few weeks later, they seemed surprised to see me. "Oh, you're his girlfriend, right?" one of them said casually. He didn't correct them. He smiled and moved the conversation along like it didn't matter. I felt my stomach tighten, but I swallowed it. I told myself titles were just words, that actions mattered more. Except his actions were changing too. He stayed later at work, not every night, but often enough that it became routine. He talked about a new account, a new manager, someone he was working closely with. He said her name in passing a few times, always casually, like it didn't mean anything. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to give him a reason to think I was suspicious or insecure. But something about the way he talked about her stuck with me. Too animated, too careful, like he was choosing his words. At home, he seemed distracted. He'd scroll on his phone during dinner, reply to messages quickly, then put the phone face down when he noticed me watching. If I asked how his day was, the answers were shorter than they used to be. Less detail, less presence. I started replaying the ring conversation in my head. It looks forced. The word echoed now in different contexts. Forced, like commitment was something he had to perform instead of something he wanted to stand in. Forced, like the ring made him feel seen in ways he wasn't ready for at work. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I wanted to understand the pattern before I challenged it. I wanted to be sure I wasn't projecting my own fears onto his behavior. So I did what I've always done when something doesn't add up. I observed, quietly, carefully. I let the data collect itself. 3 days after the party, his parents invited us to Sunday dinner. A normal invitation. Familiar. Comfortable. I said yes without hesitation. Family had always felt like neutral ground for us. Safe. That afternoon, as I was getting ready, I looked at my ring on the dresser. The same spot where I'd left it the night of his work party. I stared at it longer than necessary. And for the first time, a thought crossed my mind that made my chest tighten. What would happen if I didn't wear it? Not out of spite, not to punish him, but to test the truth he hadn't said out loud yet. So I slipped it off and left it right there. I didn't know it then, but that small, quiet decision was about to pull everything into the open. We arrived at his parents' house just before 5, the sky already starting to dim into that soft, early evening light that always made their place feel warm and familiar. His mom hugged us both at the door, the same way she always did, lingering just a little longer than necessary, like she was holding on to something steady. His dad shook my hand firmly and asked about work. Normal, comfortable, safe. Or at least that's what it used to feel like. Inside, the house was full of the usual Sunday noise. His sister was flipping through photos from a recent vacation, laughing loudly as she narrated every detail. His brother was talking about a promotion at work, clearly proud and slightly embarrassed by the attention. I sat there on the couch, smiling, nodding, participating just enough to seem present, while my left hand rested casually in my lap. Bare. I could feel the absence of the ring more than I could feel the weight of it when it was there. Every time I shifted, every time I gestured while talking, there was a quiet awareness humming under my skin. I watched him from the corner of my eye. He hadn't noticed yet, or maybe he had and was choosing not to. Dinner was announced, and we moved into the dining room. His mom had cooked a full spread, roast chicken, potatoes, vegetables, homemade bread still warm. Plates were passed around, glasses filled, conversations overlapping in that familiar family rhythm. And then his sister froze mid-sentence. "Wait," she said, squinting slightly. Where's your ring? The room went silent. Not awkward silence. Not polite silence. The kind that lands heavy, like everyone instinctively knows something important just surfaced. I felt his gaze snap to my hand, then to my face. The color drained from his skin so fast it was almost alarming. Where's your ring? His sister repeated, louder now, confused. I left it at home, I said calmly, cutting into my chicken like this was the most natural thing in the world. His mom set her fork down slowly. His dad paused mid-chew. His brother and sister-in-law exchanged a look that said, "This is not normal." Why? His mom asked carefully. I didn't rush my answer. I didn't want it to look forced, I said. Thought it might be easier to keep things low-key around family. The words hung in the air, unmistakable, unmistakably borrowed. His face went from pale to red in seconds. Can we talk in the kitchen? He asked tightly. Sure, I said, standing up. The moment the kitchen door closed behind us, he turned on me, voice low and sharp. What the hell are you doing? I'm not wearing my ring, I said evenly, like you asked. I asked you not to wear it to my work party, he snapped. Not to family dinner, not everywhere. You said it looked forced, I replied. I'm just applying that logic consistently. This is different, he said, running a hand through his hair. This is my family. And your coworkers aren't important? I asked. What's the difference? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Tried again. You're being petty. I'm being consistent, I said. You didn't want people thinking we were trying too hard. I'm respecting that. You know that's not what I meant. Then explain what you meant, I said, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. Because from where I'm standing, you're embarrassed for certain people to know we're engaged, and I'm just honoring that. His frustration cracked, something else slipping through. It's complicated at work. Complicated how? He hesitated, too long. There's someone, he said, then stopped himself. It's nothing. Never mind. There's someone, I repeated softly. Can we please just go back to dinner, he said, and you put your ring back on. I don't have it, I replied. I left it at home, same place you wanted it left before. I walked out of the kitchen alone. Back at the table, everyone was still sitting there, pretending not to stare. I sat down, picked up my fork, and continued eating like nothing had happened. But nothing was normal anymore. He didn't come back to the table right away. I sat there for 5 full minutes, listening to the sound of forks scraping plates and conversations trying and failing to restart. His mom asked his brother about work. His sister nodded along, distracted, eyes flicking toward the kitchen every few seconds. No one mentioned the ring again, but it hovered over the table like a presence everyone could feel and no one wanted to name. When he finally returned, his eyes were red. He didn't look at me. He pushed food around his plate like appetite had become optional. The dinner limped forward in fragments. Half-finished sentences, forced laughter, silence that came too often and lasted too long. Eventually, his dad cleared his throat. So, he said carefully, looking at me, are you all right? I didn't rush my answer. I don't know, I said honestly. You'd probably have to ask him. My fiancé's head snapped up. Don't put this on me. I'm not, I said. I'm just being honest. I don't know if we're okay. We are fine, he said too quickly. You're making a scene over nothing. I'm making a scene? I asked calmly. I'm sitting here eating dinner. You're the one who pulled me into the kitchen to yell at me for doing exactly what you asked. His sister leaned forward. Wait, you asked her not to wear her engagement ring? At his work party, I said. He said it looked like we were trying too hard. Her mom's face changed. You said that? She asked him quietly. I didn't mean it like that, he said, defensive now. Then how did you mean it? His dad asked. I shrugged slightly. I'm just being consistent. Wouldn't want anyone thinking we're forcing our engagement. That did it. He stood up abruptly. I need air. He walked out the back door. His mom followed immediately. His dad hesitated, then went after them. Through the window, I could see raised hands, sharp gestures, his mom's arms crossed tight across her chest. Whatever conversation was happening out there, it wasn't gentle. That left me alone at the table with his siblings. Okay, his brother said quietly. What's really going on? I exhaled slowly. Honestly, I think he's having second thoughts about the engagement, or he's keeping me hidden from someone at work, or both. His sister frowned. There is a guy at his work. My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed steady. Tell me. She hesitated. Some new manager. They've been working closely on a big account. He talks about him a lot. Stays late. Dinner meetings. And you didn't think it was just work, I said. She shook her head. I didn't want to assume. The back door opened. His parents came in first. Their faces were serious. He followed behind them, mascara smudged, jaw tight. I think we should go, he said. Now. I nodded. Okay. We said goodbye quietly. His mom hugged me longer than usual. His dad shook my hand with both of his. The drive home was silent. When we got inside, he went straight to the bedroom. Drawers opened, closed. He came out with a bag. I'm staying at my sister's tonight. Okay, I said. He stared at me. That's it? You're not going to fight for this? I looked at him, really looked. Fight for what? You won't even wear our engagement openly. You introduced me as your girlfriend. You're embarrassed to be engaged to me. What exactly am I supposed to fight for? He didn't answer. And for the first time since we got engaged, I stopped trying to protect the illusion that everything was fine. The apartment felt unnaturally quiet after he left. Not peaceful, hollow. Like the air itself was waiting for a decision to be made. I sat on the couch for a long time, replaying the dinner in my head, the way his parents' faces had changed, the way his sister had looked at me with something that felt like apology on his behalf. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I felt clear in a way that scared me. I took off my engagement ring, turned it slowly between my fingers, then placed it back into its original box. I set the box on the kitchen counter, right in the open, where he would see it the moment he walked in. I wasn't doing it to be dramatic. I was doing it because something inside me had settled. I needed my actions to finally match my words. He didn't come home that night or the next day. On Monday evening, my phone buzzed. A text. Can we talk? I stared at it for a moment, then called him. He sounded tired, quieter than usual. I've been thinking a lot, he said. About us, about what I actually want. Okay, I said. I think I got caught up in the idea of getting engaged, he continued, more than actually being ready for marriage. When that guy started paying attention to me at work, it felt exciting. New, something we haven't felt in a while. There it was, out in the open now. So you're saying we moved too fast, I said. Yes, he replied. I think we did. Are you breaking up with me? I asked, keeping my voice steady. There was a long pause. I don't know. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't know if I'm ready to be engaged, and that's not fair to you. No, I agreed. It's not. So what do we do? He asked. You come get your ring, I said. We call off the engagement, and you figure out what you actually want. Silence. Just like that? He asked. Just like that, I said. You shouldn't be confused about wanting to marry someone. You should be sure. What if I figure it out and want you back? He asked quietly. Then we'll see where I am when that happens, I replied. But I'm not waiting in limbo while you keep your options open. He came by Thursday evening. He walked in, saw the ring box on the counter, and broke down immediately, crying the kind of tears that come from consequence, not surprise. I really did love you, he said. I know, I replied. Past tense matters. I'm so confused, he whispered. That's the problem, I said gently. You shouldn't be. He picked up the box, opened it, stared at the ring for a long moment. Can we try again someday? He asked. When I'm ready? I won't wait for someday, I said. If you leave now, I'm moving on. You need to be sure. He closed the box. I think this is what I need to do. Then good luck, I said. He left with the ring. I watched his car disappear down the street and felt something unexpected settle in my chest. Relief. Not anger, not heartbreak. Relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore. The first few days after he left felt deceptively calm. No arguments, no tension hanging in the air, just silence. The kind that initially feels like relief, until it settles too deep and starts echoing. I went through my routines on autopilot. Woke up, worked, ate when I remembered to, slept without really resting. Friends checked in, cautiously, unsure what to say. I told them I was fine because it was easier than explaining how hollow fine felt. I wasn't falling apart, but I wasn't whole either. I was suspended in that uncomfortable space where something has ended, but the weight of it hasn't fully landed yet. Then one night, it did. I was sitting alone on the couch, scrolling aimlessly, when I came across a photo from months earlier. Us at a friend's birthday dinner. My hand resting on his arm, the ring visible, my smile wide and unguarded. I stared at it longer than I should have, my chest tightening in a way it hadn't yet. That was the moment it hit me. Not that the engagement was over, but that I had been ready in a way he never was. I hadn't just lost a fiancé. I'd lost the future I'd already committed to in my mind. The shared plans, the assumptions, the quiet certainty that comes from believing you're building toward something solid. And now, all of that was gone, not because of a dramatic betrayal, but because he wanted to keep feeling wanted by people who didn't know him the way I did. That realization hurt more than I expected. I cried that night, not loudly, not dramatically, just tears slipping down my face as I sat there alone, realizing how close I'd come to marrying someone who needed outside validation more than he needed honesty. Someone who asked me to shrink our commitment so he could feel desirable elsewhere. The darkest thought crept in then. What if I'd just gone along with it? What if I'd kept wearing the ring at home, stayed low-key everywhere else, waited patiently while he figured himself out? I imagined a version of myself years later, married but still hidden, still compromising, still wondering why something felt off. That version of me scared me more than being alone ever could. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake listening to the quiet of the apartment, realizing that the loneliness I felt now was different from the loneliness I'd felt with him. This one hurt, but it was honest. The other had been constant and invisible. By morning, I knew something important. This pain wasn't a mistake. It was the cost of choosing myself before it was too late. And even though it hurt, I also knew I wouldn't trade it for the kind of future I almost accepted. The turning point didn't come with a phone call or a sudden apology. It came quietly, the way real clarity usually does, on a Wednesday morning when I realized I wasn't waiting for my phone to light up anymore. For days after the breakup, I'd caught myself checking my screen out of habit, half expecting his name to appear. Not because I wanted him back, but because my body was still adjusting to the absence. That morning, I noticed something different. The phone stayed face down on the counter while I made coffee, and I didn't feel anxious about it at all. That's when it hit me. I wasn't hoping anymore. Later that afternoon, his sister called. I hesitated before answering, unsure what she might say, but her voice was gentle, almost careful. She told me she was sorry, not in a vague, polite way, but sincerely. She said she hadn't realized how much pressure her brother had been under at work, how much he cared about being admired, about feeling desired. She admitted she'd been disappointed in him, especially after that dinner. "You didn't do anything wrong," she said. "If anything, you were the only one being honest." After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time without starting the engine. That was the first time someone from his world had validated what I already knew but had been afraid to fully accept. I hadn't overreacted. I hadn't pushed too hard. I hadn't ruined anything. I had simply refused to pretend. That night, I opened the drawer where I'd placed my spare ring box, the one I'd kept after returning his ring. I held it in my hand, feeling the weight of it, the symbolism. For months, that ring had represented a future I was actively choosing, one I was ready for, one he wasn't. And suddenly, I understood something with painful clarity. Love isn't proven by how much you're willing to hide. Commitment isn't quiet by necessity. When someone asks you to shrink your place in their life so they can feel larger elsewhere, that isn't compromise. That's erasure. I stopped wondering whether he'd ever be ready. I stopped asking myself if timing had been the issue. Timing wasn't the problem. Alignment was. I was moving toward a future that required certainty. He was still chasing feelings that needed ambiguity to survive. The moment I accepted that, something inside me settled. I wasn't walking away from a man who might have chosen me someday. I was walking away from a situation that required me to disappear in the meantime. And for the first time since the engagement ended, I didn't feel loss. I felt grounded. The fallout didn't explode. It unfolded. Slowly, unevenly, in ways that didn't feel dramatic at first, but carried weight the longer they lingered. In the weeks after we called off the engagement, I didn't announce anything publicly. No posts, no explanations. I let people notice the absence on their own. When friends asked, I told the truth without embellishment. We ended the engagement because we wanted different things. I wasn't ready to translate the deeper truth into something more digestible for them. I didn't owe anyone a version that made it easier to swallow. What surprised me was how quickly the truth started to circle back to him. His coworkers found out eventually. Not because I said anything, but because he didn't know how to explain the sudden disappearance of the ring, the canceled wedding plans he'd vaguely referenced, the shift in how he showed up. A few mutual acquaintances from his office reached out to me quietly, asking if everything was okay. I kept my answers short and kind. I didn't correct the narrative unless someone asked directly. And when they did, I didn't protect him anymore. His family felt the change too. His sister checked in once more, telling me she'd had a hard conversation with him, that she'd asked him why he was willing to risk a real future for attention that wouldn't last. She said he didn't have a good answer, that he kept saying he wasn't ready, like readiness was something that just happened to you instead of something you chose. His parents were quieter, polite, sad. When I ran into his mom at the grocery store one afternoon, she hugged me without saying much. Her eyes said everything. I could feel the disappointment she was carrying, not just for me, but for the son she thought was building a life instead of circling one. Then there was the coworker, the one whose attention had mattered more than our engagement. I heard through his sister that they started dating officially not long after we broke things off. Taking it slow, apparently. No pressure, no labels. That stung for about 5 seconds, until the irony settled in. He hadn't been afraid of commitment. He'd been afraid of committing to me. 2 months later, that relationship ended too. No scandal, no betrayal, just fizzled out. The excitement wore off. The attention shifted. The thing he'd been protecting so carefully turned out to be exactly what it always was, temporary. He reached out after that. Just once. A short message, careful, polite. He said he'd been thinking about everything, that he missed me, that he wondered if we could meet for coffee and talk, no expectations, just to see where we were now. I stared at that message for a long time. There was a version of me, not that long ago, who would have said yes immediately. Who would have taken it as proof that patience pays off, that if you wait long enough, people eventually realize what they lost. But I wasn't her anymore. I thought about standing in his parents' kitchen, listening to him struggle to explain why our engagement made him uncomfortable. I thought about the ring sitting on the dresser, the way I'd nodded and swallowed something important to keep the peace. I thought about how easily he'd asked me to shrink, and how slowly he'd realized what that cost. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I didn't need that conversation anymore to understand what had happened. The fallout had already done its work. The truth had returned to him on its own. And I was already walking in a different direction. It's been 3 months since the engagement ended. Long enough for the initial shock to fade, long enough for the quiet to feel normal instead of alarming. My life is smaller in some ways now, fewer shared plans, fewer assumptions about the future, but it's also clearer, cleaner. I wake up each morning knowing exactly where I stand, and that certainty is something I didn't realize I'd been missing for a long time. I've been on a few dates, nothing serious yet, just conversations, laughter, moments of connection that don't carry the weight of expectation. I'm not rushing. I'm learning what it feels like to be chosen without hesitation, even in small ways. And just as importantly, I'm learning what I will no longer tolerate. His sister reached out about 2 months after we broke up. She apologized again, this time with disappointment rather than shock in her voice. She told me he'd started dating the coworker officially after our engagement ended. They'd kept it quiet, apparently trying to be intentional. It lasted about 2 months. Then it fell apart. No drama, just reality catching up. He reached out once more after that, asked if we could grab coffee and talk. I haven't responded yet. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm honest with myself now. Part of me wonders if he's grown. A bigger part of me remembers standing in his family's kitchen, listening to him struggle to explain why he was embarrassed of our engagement. That feeling doesn't disappear just because time passes. The ring sits in my drawer now. I kept it, even though I gave his ring back. Sometimes I take it out and hold it, not with sadness, but with understanding. It represents a promise I was ready to keep and he wasn't ready to receive. That doesn't make me foolish. It makes me clear. The lesson I carry forward is simple, but hard-earned. When someone asks you to hide a symbol of commitment because it looks forced, what they're really saying is that the commitment itself feels heavy to them. And no amount of patience, compromise, or silence will make someone ready if they're still chasing the feeling of being wanted by everyone else. I don't regret taking off my ring at that family dinner. It forced an honest conversation we'd been avoiding for months. It exposed a truth we were both afraid to say out loud. He wasn't ready to be engaged, and I wasn't willing to beg someone to want to marry me. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop protecting a future that only exists in your imagination. Better alone than engaged to someone who treats commitment like something to hide. And honestly, I'm grateful the truth arrived when it did.